And today's webinar is brought to you by 10 Power, We Build Progress, Revolve, the Environmental Protection Network, and Lawyers for Good Government. We are all organizations that are working towards a regenerative future and helping entities to qualify for renewable energy tax credits and helping to provide information in service of getting more renewable energy online, reducing costs for organizations like yours that are doing great work out there. And so I'm really excited to be hosting this conversation today. Your speakers will be myself, Sandra Kwok. I'm the CEO and founder of 10 Power. Graham Steinberg, who is the Organizing Associate Outreach and Organizing at We Build Progress. Andreas Karelas, who is the founder and executive director of Revolve. Olivia Smith from Environmental Protection Network. She's there as a senior community outreach associate. And we will also have AC Meyer online to answer any legal questions. They're a lawyer with Lawyers for Good Government and can help with those really technical questions in terms of specifics around legal issues. Here's a quick overview of our agenda today. So I'll take us through a quick introduction and then we'll do a 2-question poll to see where folks are at in the room around direct pay tax credits and readiness of projects. Then Graham's going to take us on a deeper dive into what direct or elective pay actually is in terms of the investment tax credit. Andreas and I will be talking about opportunities and project support as well as examples, and we'll have a word from Olivia in terms of support that the Environmental Protection Network can provide. And if at any point you have questions, please pop them into the Q&A chat in the webinar. So that's at the bottom on your menu. You'll see a specific area for Q&A. Please put questions in there as opposed to in the general chat, just because it's easier for us to track them and make sure that they get answered. And we'll have ample time for discussion, hopefully, at the end. So quick introduction in terms of why you should go solar. I'm assuming everybody here is on board with the magnificent powers that the sun is shining upon us. It's a massive generator that is emissions free. And in terms of benefits to organizations, helps to create resilience and to create energy savings. After your solar is paid off, your savings really drastically increase over what we usually model as a 25-year lifespan of a project, but we're seeing projects out in the field that are lasting 40 years or more. So the amazing assets of these photovoltaic panels, and it also protects you from price shocks with utilities, creates more climate resilience, and the more energy savings that you have, the more money that you can put towards the mission of your organization and the communities that you serve. Now, a little less simplistic are the solar tax credits. So the ITC, or the investment tax credit, is under IRS code 48E. And previously, for many, many, many years, it was put in place originally under the first George Bush. And for many years, the ITC was only available to entities that had a huge tax burden. So think about the ultra wealthy or private equity firms. So because it was a tax credit, you had to have multi-millions in taxes to be able to really take advantage of the ITC, or the investment tax credit. Now, under the Biden-Harris administration, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was such an amazing piece of legislature in terms of climate justice, for the first time allowed organizations that don't pay taxes to take advantage of this tax credit. So tribes, schools, churches, nonprofits, tax exempt entities could apply for the tax credit and receive a direct cash rebate known as direct pay or elective pay upon project completion. They raised the base amount of the ITC to 30%. So as long as the project meets labor standards and US made requirements, you can qualify automatically for that first 30%. And then there are a bunch of other adders that you could put on top. So 10% for low income community, 10% for Indian lands, 20% for low income residential, and 20% for qualified economic benefit. Some of these cancel each other out. So we like to say a safe landing spot to shoot for is 30 to 50% of a project return, which is really incredible. 50% of the project costs back at the completion of the project really helps projects to come online a lot faster, and that's cash back to your organization that can be reinvested. So we're trying to help as many organizations as possible to thread the needle on these tax credits because dun dun dun, they're going away. So the Trump administration strong-armed Congress into sunsetting these tax credits. And there is an imminent deadline coming up of July 4th this year, so a couple of months from now, for safe harboring projects if you want to be able to have 4 years to complete them. Otherwise, you have to have your projects done by 2027, which is kind of unrealistic. So in order to actually get projects done over the next 4 years, we got to get them safe harbored by July 4th. And the way to do this is to have substantial completion or construction begun, which the easiest way, in my estimation, is to pay 5% of the construction costs by July 4th. And so that enables you to lock in these tax credits and finish your project anytime over the next 4 years to be able to get those rebates back in the door. So that's a very high level overview. Graham will be taking us on a much more detailed dive into the ITC and direct or elective pay. But first off, we're going to do a quick poll. And if you look at the bottom of your Zoom menu, you'll see this poll on your screen. You can click on that and check out these two questions. How familiar are you with direct pay or elective pay? And what is your solar readiness level for engaging with the ITC or investment tax credit? Looks like over half of our participants have filled out the poll so far. I'll give folks a little stanza. Here's a song from my band, the Sea Stars. Let me get that solar, solar, bring back the honeybees, and baby, we'll rule, we'll rule, we'll rule, we'll rule, when we live sustainably. theseastars.org. Check us out. So our poll is showing that the majority, 48% of folks, are somewhat familiar with direct pay. And on the second question, it looks like the majority of folks, about 50% of participants, have a project currently underway and are planning on or have applied for the ITC. That's great. And those of you who are in the 30% idea phase and 20% curious, we're here to help jetpack you to get through that window before it closes. So we'll definitely be in conversation about that. So thank you for participating in the poll and voting in the midterms. And now we're going to hand it over to Graham to take us away on direct pay.
Thanks so much, Sandra. Elijah, do you mind pulling up those slides?
All right.
Do you see it? Oh, there we are.
Perfect. Oh,
Oh, nope, sorry, wrong one. Mhm. Oh,
All right, well, let me
back down.
just get it like from my end. I think you should be able to see it now from my end. Don't worry, let me try. Can you see it?
perfect.
Okay, that's fine.
Thanks, Elijah.
All right.
All right. Do you mind going back to that first slide for a second?
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Hey, everybody. My name is Graham Steinberg. I'm the Organizing and Outreach Associate with We Build Progress, and we're a nonprofit that seeks to demystify the federal government and build cross-movement solidarity. As part of our Livable Futures team, I've spent the last few years raising awareness of the direct pay program and helping eligible entities like yourself take advantage of these tax credits through technical assistance. Let me begin by making sure folks understand that everything I'm sharing today is for general information purposes and not intended to serve as legal advice. I urge you to consult a qualified attorney licensed in your state if you have any legal questions about this, especially about any specific project's viability. You can also use Lawyer for Good Government. AC is on the call right now. You can use their elective pay Sprint Hub tool, which we've partnered with them on, and which includes a space to ask such questions. So feel free to go on to the next one, Elijah. Okay, before we really get into everything, I kind of want to re-up some of Sandra's points and dive into one point that I know has really confused many of our partners. To be clear, the clean energy tax credits do remain available for tribes and nonprofits like houses of worship, schools, community groups for a short time. These entities can claim a cash refund of anywhere from 30 to 50%, as was outlined, of project costs for building community-owned clean energy projects like solar, wind, geothermal, heat pumps, and energy storage. But there's a narrowing window of opportunity. Tribes and nonprofits will need to act quickly to save as many clean projects as possible and seize this opportunity before it's gone. At its inception, direct pay was created as a mechanism for tax-exempt entities to access existing tax credits that were already available for many businesses on clean energy projects, and make those more available to nonprofits. That means tribes, nonprofits, houses of worship, and schools, among others, could access these tax credits in the form of cash refunds for building renewable energy projects. Think of direct pay essentially as a straw that allowed entities like yourself to drink the juice that is clean energy tax credits. Now, the Trump tax plan sunsets the tax credits for everyone, not just tax exempt entities. So the direct pay mechanism, the straw, is still intact, but there's a depleting amount of juice for us all to drink, essentially. The law also adds onerous rules that restrict material sourcing, payment, and more, and we'll get more into the details about those PFE rules shortly. Because of the global nature of financial markets and manufacturing for clean energy technology, many projects will end up being tripped up by these rules, so it's important we discuss them a little further. If you want to go on to the next slide, Elijah. So first, I want to talk about some definitions that you need to know in order to understand the new deadlines in the timeline. Certain eligible entities will need to begin construction by a certain time, and we'll get into the deadline soon, but the first thing to understand is how a project is considered to have what they call begun construction. Now, as Sandra mentioned, smaller scale solar projects, which I assume applies to a lot of people here, can establish the beginning of a construction by incurring at least 5% of their total project costs, which is what we call a safe harbor. Personally, at We Build Progress, we recommend trying to get more up to 10 to 15% to account for overages, but as long as you hit that 5% threshold, you are in the safe harbor and have begun construction. For larger scale solar projects and all wind projects, you'll need to start what they define as physical work of a significant nature. Now, this can be constituted as most things done on or off site as long as it's been done by a taxpayer or a contractor, and this is important, under a binding contract. We can go on to the next one now, Elijah. Now, projects are considered to be placed in service when, and I'm going to use their definition first, in a condition or state of readiness and availability for a specifically assigned function. So simply put, this is the date a turbine or a panel has been switched on and is actively generating electricity. Essentially, as soon as your project is doing what it is defined at, what is its defined function, it is now placed in service. Okay, we can go on next one. Now, there are three types of prohibited foreign entity, or PFE rules, that the Trump administration has added to further restrict projects. This is what I was referring to earlier. These relate to projects that are created by a specified foreign entity, also known as an SFE, involve payments giving them effective control, and/or are constructed with a significant portion of components manufactured by these entities. Now, the SFE definition most commonly applies to projects relating to Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Those are the countries that are most predominantly being targeted by this program, by these rules. All projects that did not begin construction before December 31st of last year will have to follow these new rules, and that should likely pertain to most folks on this call, I would guess, but maybe not all. Feel free to go to the next one. So most of the direct pay eligible projects we work with will pursue what's called the investment tax credit, or the ITC, for wind and solar projects. As you can see on the table, the two main deadlines you need to pay attention to are July 4th, 2026 and December 31st, 2027. After that latter date, the 4080 credit will no longer be available for any projects. To understand what deadlines and rules apply to your project, you first need to know when you will be able to begin construction based on the definition I stated before in relation to the timeline here. And these slides are all going to be shared after, so you'll be able to look and see your place on there after the call. Projects that begin construction before July 4th of this year will have 4 calendar years after the calendar year during which construction began to place it in service. So essentially, you have 4 years starting after the place in service date, starting from the following year after the place in service date to begin construction, as long as you start the project before July 4th of this year. Okay, we can move on. Now, while there are many changes to wind and solar credits, the Section 4080 credit remains largely unchanged for other technologies, including energy storage and geothermal. Despite this, even these non-wind and non-solar projects will be subject to the Material Assistance PFE rules, so that one mentioned earlier, if construction begins after December 31st of last year. So that started right away. Energy storage, geothermal, hydroelectric, and other non-solar, non-wind projects must begin construction by the end of 2033 to receive full technology-neutral tax credits. Projects beginning in 2034 or 2035 will receive reduced forms of the credit, and then they will be completely phased out in 2036. So there's still more time for those projects. Now, ground source heat pumps can still be claimed for eligible projects that begin construction anytime before the end of 2034. PFE restrictions also do not apply for this credit, so we highly recommend pursuing it as a long-term project option, particularly after the other credits have sunsetted. You want to, yeah, perfect. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure will still qualify for the 30C credit as long as it's placed in service by June 30th of this year. It must be in an eligible census tract and comply with prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements to qualify. EV vehicle purchases themselves qualify for the 45W credit simply as long as they were acquired by September 30th, 2025. Now, acquisition in this case is considered their form of being placed in service. So, slightly different definition, but same principles apply there. Go on to the next one now. Now, I hope this helped you kind of get a better idea of the basic timeline of direct pay and sort of how long you have to qualify. I have my information here, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to all the people you're going to hear from shortly. My team and I are more than happy to provide you with any assistance while the credits remain available. We've also included some resources here, and there's more details in the appendix. And as I said, the deck will be shared out after, so feel free to use any of these. And with that, I'll hand it back to Sandra. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Graham. Next up, we have Andreas from Revolve, who's going to take us through some implementation, real world examples, and support.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandra, and thank you everybody for the great presentation so far. And thanks everybody for joining today. It looks like we've got a packed house. So glad to see so many people are lining up to take advantage of the ITC while we still have it. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Andreas Corellis. I'm the founder and executive director of Revolve. Revolve is a nonprofit organization, and we focus on bringing clean energy access to nonprofits across the country that otherwise wouldn't have access to solar, particularly by developing the projects and providing financing for the projects, as well as community engagement and storytelling. So we will dive into a little bit more of that. We're based here in San Francisco and have been doing this work since 2011. So we just at a high level like to think of our work as having three pillars, what we call invest, engage, and empower. And so the investment piece of our work is, as it sounds, we provide low-cost financing for nonprofits that want to go solar, and I'll get into that in more detail in just a moment. And then the other sort of really important pieces to accelerate the clean energy transition are going to be what we call engage and empower. On the engagement side, that's hosting a ribbon cutting with each project we do, trying to get local leaders to share with their community how exciting it is that this nonprofit has gone solar, shooting video, getting that story out into the news on social media. We really have been losing the narrative in the United States around clean energy and climate, and we need to be highlighting these projects as much as possible possible and getting people talking about them. So this is such a key part of any project. And then, of course, empowering the next generation of clean energy leaders. We do that through our Solar Ambassador Fellowship Program, where we train college students and as well as volunteers of any age who want to lead a project in their community. And we've got some training materials to help you do that. So just at a high level, Revolve has helped over 140 nonprofits in 20 states go solar at this point. It's about $20 million deployed, and that translates to $40 million worth of energy savings for those nonprofits. So for every dollar that goes into one of these clean energy projects, that's going to result in over $2 worth of savings for that nonprofit over the lifetime of the system that they can put back into their mission. So this has resulted in about 6 megawatts of projects, and we've trained about 500 ambassadors from 30 universities so far. This is a piece that I just, want to include. We try to talk about it as much as we can, and I think it's just so important for everybody to realize the impact of your project. For those of you that have been in solar for a while, you may be familiar with this concept of the seeding effect of solar, also known as the contagious effect or the ripple effect. And it basically says that, when someone goes solar, their neighbor is more likely to go solar, and their neighbor is even more likely to go solar, and so on and so forth. You create this ripple in your community. And a recent study from Lawrence Berkeley Lab found that when a nonprofit goes solar, or a house of worship, that impact is even more pronounced. So one nonprofit going solar or one house of worship that goes solar is going to result in over 80 residential follow-on installations in the next 5 years in that community alone. Basically, every quarter, there's going to be 3 to 5 residential solar adoptions as a result of one nonprofit going solar. So when you go solar, it's not just, you're saving, you're also, helping to spur this ripple effect in the community. So obviously, I think, for everybody that's here, we want to take advantage of the tax credits. As Sandra and Graham pointed out, that's going to cover 30 to up to 50% of your project. What about the rest? What about the other 70%? How are you going to finance that if you don't have cash on hand to do a direct purchase? So these are the financing options that Revolve offers to nonprofits across the country. Again, this is just for 501c3s that are eligible for direct pay. So we don't work with, municipal entities, for example. So if a nonprofit wants to own their own solar equipment, which is increasingly popular, we can provide a loan for your solar, your storage, your roof repair or replacement, an electrical panel upgrade, if you want to add EV chargers to that. And we provide low-cost loans, either 7-year term or up to 20-year term with zero down. So that is the sort of easy way to own your own system up front. And what we do in that case is help your organization go through the process of filing for direct pay. So filing for elective pay. Of course, we can't shout from the rooftops enough how much we appreciate the folks at Lawyers for Good Government. As Sandra mentioned, AC is here to answer folks' questions. So yeah, Lawyers for Good Government and their elective pay Sprint Hub is a free resource that's available to nonprofits and is absolutely a godsend for everybody in this space. We also, for those folks that don't want to own their equipment, we also offer a lease or a power purchase agreement. And in this case, since Revolve is a nonprofit, we own the system and we claim the tax credit, file that for you, maintain the system for you over time, and you're again just getting zero down, solar financed on your roof. You're getting the electric bill savings, targeting 10 to 15% in year one. So those are the two different ways, either direct ownership or third-party ownership, that we help nonprofits go solar. As has been mentioned by Sandra and Graham so far, these are the important dates to keep in mind. Obviously, July 4th, 2026, if you can sign your project, get that 5 to 10% initial payment so that you can begin construction. That will allow you an extra 4 years to complete your project, which is what you really want to do. Now, for those of you that don't get to the July 4th deadline, but we really want to stress, get to the July 4th deadline. But if you don't, all is not lost, especially for those smaller organizations. If you're just doing, a 10, 20 kilowatt system on your roof, that should not, we still have a year and a half until the end of next year, right? So December 31st of 2027. Those projects should, take less than 6 months. So if you don't get the July 4th deadline, if you don't get the July 4th deadline, work as hard as you can to get signed and get your project completed and fully placed in service by December 31st. Because if you miss that deadline, then you do miss the ITC. So, all encouragement on July 4th. But if that does feel out of reach, don't fret. We can help you get there by December 31st of the following year. And yeah, now just to show a little, some success stories, right? I think it can be daunting for a nonprofit to look at this and say, gosh, there's a lot of moving pieces, there's a lot of legislation, there are tax credits that we need to understand all these terms. And ultimately, groups like 10 Power and Revolve are here to help you navigate that, right? We're here to help smooth out that process and make it as easy as possible for your nonprofit to go solar and manage all of this, behind the scenes as much as possible. So here are a few examples. This is an awesome youth organization in North Philadelphia called Yeah Philly. Yeah, this $85,000 or this 12 kilowatt project is going to save them $85,000 over the life of the system. And I will mention, we did actually get some donation support from Billie Eilish for this project, which was super cool. And again, leads to more storytelling and more narrative change that we need. So love to see her support and leadership. This is a charter school in Northern California called Plumas Charter School, which we installed with our partners, Grid Alternatives. This is a 55 kilowatt system. It's going to save them over $700,000 on their electric bills that they can put back into serving their students. This is a Lifeline animal shelter in Atlanta, Georgia. It's the largest animal shelter in Georgia. We also like putting this picture here because why not include pictures of puppies in the presentation? This 200 kilowatt system is going to save them over $1.5 million on their electric bills that they can put back into serving their community. And this is the Watts Willowbrook Church in Compton, California, part of our initiative with Green the Church and Interfaith Power and Light, where we got some DOE funding to support BIPOC-led houses of worship. So this project, 12 kilowatt system, got an award from the city of Compton. The mayor came to the ribbon cutting. It was a really special event. It's going to save them, close to $200,000 on their electric bill. So this is possible. This is doable. We encourage all of you to get involved. You can go to the website here, revolve.org/nonprofit, or go to this QR code, or shoot us an email at gosolar@revolve.org and let us know how we can help. Thanks so much.
Yeah, nice. Applause, Andreas. Such beautiful, impactful work that you're
Thank you.
doing. And I will launch us now into 10 Power's work. And it's too many menus covering up my little presenting button. There we go. We are in a similar vein as Revolve. 10 Power is actually a for-profit social impact enterprise, and we are focused on climate justice through renewable energy. Andreas and I have actually been friends through several lifetimes of work with various organizations. So I'm really excited to be collaborating, and continuing our climate collaboration in this space. 10 Power's vision long-term is to restore a regenerative trajectory for human evolution on planet Earth. We feel like maybe somewhere around 500 to 1,000 years ago, humanity kind of started steering towards extinction. And it's up to us who are awake and paying attention right now to help right that course of the ship. And our mission is 100% renewables for 100% of humanity. I launched the company actually 10 years ago. We've been working in Haiti. We are now working with Native American tribal nations to build, own, and operate renewable energy projects. And with every project that we do, we have a local workforce development angle and a gender equity angle. Super important to us. This is some footage of a resilience hub that we are building with the Pine Point community on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. It is at a school and an elderly gathering center. It will be a 0.5 megawatt of solar and 2.76 megawatt hours of energy storage. And the project was developed in conjunction with a local community-based organization called Eighth Fire Solar that has been doing trainings on solar thermal panels. So we've been working with them on PV training for the community. The school is going to own the project, and it was $0 out of pocket for the community. It's also an example of the tribe's goals of creating a tribal utility commission, building energy sovereignty with the tribe, and we're excited to replicate it with more tribal communities. And this project is going live very soon. And we are really incredibly honored to be working with these Native leaders. We set up a joint venture structure with Eighth Fire Solar so that we're working together on the long-term operations and maintenance of the project. And the actual array and batteries will generate over 100% of the school's energy usage. It's an all-electric school. And so this model is going to create a ton of savings for them. We went to bat with the utility on the rates to make sure that they are maximizing those savings. Still embroiled with that conversation, but yeah, combating institutional racism and helping tribes to really build up energy sovereignty within communities. The financing structure for this project was a blended capital stack. So it means that we used traditional debt, but in a creative way, as well as grants and the ITC. So out of the total project costs, which were about $4 million, we got several grants, including from the DOE. Those are not flowing anymore, but there are private investors who still have some philanthropic capital to put towards these types of projects. We got a state grant and we got some private grants. And then for the ITC portion, we're anticipating we're going to qualify for 40%. We applied for the tribal nations adder on top of the 30% base. And we took out a construction bridge loan for that portion. So because the ITC direct pay comes back at the end of the project, we took out a short-term loan to cover the amount that we need for construction. And we actually structured this as a recoverable grant or a forgivable loan, which means that if something goes sideways with the ITC, if the administration continues to do erratic and unpredictable things, then we could change this loan into a grant. So it basically negates the risk for the community to be able to take advantage of the tax credits. And we have a whole other webinar on our donor advised fund and how we've been structuring philanthropic investments, which I'm happy to share out in our follow-up materials. But we have found a number of really interesting and creative ways to finance projects, and it's something that we specialize in, is helping you pull together the capital to get your projects up and running. So 10 Power is here to help support projects that create maximum returns to community members. So that usually looks like full ownership of the project, but we're also happy to engage with third-party ownership as well. And we can meet you or the community wherever you are in the journey. So if it's still idea phase, we've helped tribes with strategic energy planning. So we've gotten grants to do strategic energy plans for tribal nations. We can help with the acceleration, project management, outreach. Utility negotiations has been a big hurdle for a lot of communities that we've worked with. Definitely with the finance structuring, we're here to help support. And all the way through to the operations and maintenance, or O&M, which in our work, we've seen a number of grant funded projects that fail to incorporate O&M, and then it's really sad because a couple of years later you see a project that's in complete disarray. And so we want that leadership to be at the community level, creating jobs within the community, and to make sure that the equipment is accessible and easily repairable. We are wholeheartedly committed to local workforce development. On the left side, you see women from our Haitian Solar Women's Installer Training Program that we launched in partnership with Haiti Tech University and the Solar Electric Light Fund. We're incredibly proud that all of the ladies who graduated from that program are now working with Haitian solar installers. And I don't know how much bearing we had on this, but the UN now puts out a requirement in their bids in Haiti to have women solar installers. When we got there, there were zero in the field. And on the right side of this slide, you can see our partner, Red Cloud Renewables Women Program. They are an incredible leader in tribal trainings and have been around since the 90s, training Native American tribal nation members on renewable energy. And they have a program called Bridge that trains women into spirit people and solar, which lost funding. So if you know anybody who's looking to fund that type of thing, please let them know. 10 Power also has US made panels and batteries. So this is an important component of the direct pay or elective pay ITC. So there are requirements for Made in America inventory in addition to the PFE countries that you can't have anywhere in your supply chain. There are percentages that you have to have of domestic made content. And what we're already seeing is that large players are buying up this inventory. And so as we get closer to the deadline, we're probably going to see a big bottleneck in the supply chain. So if you have projects that are already in motion and you're looking for domestic content, let us know so that we can get your orders into the queue if you'd like to engage with us on that front. And just in the greater picture, we really have seen live in action how building renewable energy capacity really helps communities and supports critical services. And working in places like Haiti, we built projects like this water desalination plant behind me that's providing clean drinking water to 40,000 people. In case of fascism, invest in resilient energy infrastructure and double down on mutual aid. So let's get together. Let's secure the ITC for your projects before this deadline, and we'll share out contact information. I'm so grateful to all of you and the incredible work that you're doing. And with that, I will hand it over to Olivia, who's going to share about the Environmental Protection Network services.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm just figuring out my screen share. I realized I could do it well on my end, Elijah, so you don't have to worry about it. But we're gonna click view here. How does this look for folks?
Good.
All right, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning if you're on the West Coast. I'm Olivia Smith. I'm the Senior Community Outreach Associate for the Great Lakes region, and for the Environmental Protection Network's Pro Bono Technical Assistance Program. So kind of in the spirit of there being no wrong door to ask for help in these projects, I just want to share a little bit about what our technical assistance is broadly. We harness a network of former EPA alumni to provide pro bono subject matter expertise on a wide range of things, including local initiatives, helping folks apply for grants, helping them protect their funds, and which is a really big issue. It's been a big issue for the last year, especially out of EPA. Those grants that were all really hyped up around environmental justice projects were all very much terminated. And so helping folks fight the legal battle in partnership with Lawyers for Good Government, and then help them also build partners across the large landscape of environmental justice work and clean energy work. And so I'll say here for context that while we are not IRS or tax experts, we do want to help communities who especially have had their funds terminated or were never actually offered a grant by the EPA in the first place to find other ways to finance their projects. I'm thinking about those Solar for All applicants, grantees, subawardees, those community change grant applicants, grantees, and subawardees, especially those building resilience hubs. We want to be a bridge to helping those projects continue. So without further ado, I want to get into some success stories because I think that's the best way to show the power of these projects. I work in the Midwest, so I'm going to highlight some Midwest ones. First, I'm going to talk about Sugar Creek Lutheran Church's solar installation project. Sugar Creek, if you don't know where that is, it's about an hour southwest of Milwaukee driving. And just an overview of their project, their church secured about 54,000 in total support for solar installation by combining grants, state incentives, donations, and then using, of course, direct pay and the investment tax credit. Thinking specifically about the direct pay benefits, Sugar Creek expects to receive just under 20K in investment tax credits and then another 6.5K in bonus for using American-made steel and iron. So thinking about what Sandra just said about domestic content, this is really important because you can add more to your benefit this way. And again, also referencing Sandra's initial point there that a good estimate can be around 50% when for qualifying benefits. And that's about where this community reached. They got to 40% of their project costs being covered by direct pay tax credit benefits. They also harnessed complementary funding, as you can see, that included around over 30K in other independent financing and funding from various grant programs. And then finally, I want to talk about what the reinvestment savings means for this community. Churches are a real pillar in communities, especially rural ones. And so this new system that they installed and placed in service was allowed them to save the church an average of 4K per year in energy costs. This church aims to then redirect those funds into outreach programs at their local food pantry, education scholarships, and adult daycare services. So just thinking about what this has meant for this church and that community, it's not just a way to save money, but it's also a way to invest in their community going forward. Another short example, I know I'm between the Q&A. I'm the one standing between the Q&A session, so I'll be quick. This webinar was predominantly about solar projects, and I think we need to focus on that given the timeline. But I also just want to echo back to what Graham said about the excitement and prime the pump, so to speak, around geothermal and ground source heat pump projects, which last up until, as Graham said, about 2034. So I really do want to focus on solar here, but I just want to also highlight this geothermal project in at Johnson Senior High in St. Paul. They leveraged the direct pay and the tax credit to install ground source heat pumps they're used to both cool and heat their school. This was actually the first time that the school had air conditioning. So just think about that for a moment. This allowed them to open up classes during the summer. Kids could learn year round. They saw fewer visits to the school nurse and fewer challenges with students not being able to learn and be uncomfortable in hot weather days. And then their project actually allowed them to, I'm looking at their savings now. It's projected to be roughly 7 million over the next 30 years just from their heat pump installation. And thinking about the specifics of the geothermal project, which was kind of part of this larger modernization project, the geothermal component was about 4 million of that cost totally, and the direct pay tax credit is estimated to be around 1.2 to 2.8 million. So again, in that ballpark of 50%. This is a much larger project, but I just want to emphasize still, this is one school. This is one facility, and it impacts an entire community, given that rate of improvement around fewer visits to the school nurse, more days that kids can be in school, given summer programming. So I'm just going to kind of open that window a bit to thinking about the timeline for geothermal projects. If you're looking for more success stories, I would be remiss not to highlight these two mapping efforts. The Midwest Climate Collaborative has an interactive map of direct pay projects, and then the Climate Program Portal has a local government direct pay tracker. I'll stop there, but I will also link my intake form in the chat. Again, there's no wrong door for asking for help. EPN works really closely with Lawyers for Good Government and their Clean Energy Tax Navigator and their clinic, and also with We Build Progress on this stuff. So you can come to me for questions, and I will either help you get them or introduce you to people who can. Thank you so much.
So grateful to EPN. We were collaborating back when the climate justice capital was flowing on some big EPA grants, which we're currently embroiled in lawsuits with the government. But yeah, lots of incredible expertise there. So we're going to go super quickly through some of these questions. Please, if you have more questions, navigate to the Q&A icon. It's a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. At the bottom, Bill had a question about the 30% base, and if you get a grant for it, does it cancel out? AC, would you like to elaborate a little bit on the earmarked grants versus overhead grants? Because that was new information to me in our last webinar.
Oh, yeah. So I think you're talking about then restricted grants versus unrestricted grants. And the way that's set up in statute is restricted funds versus unrestricted funds, the exact statutory text there. And that means something a little different in this context than I think we're used to in most nonprofit settings. Because I think generally when most nonprofits hear about restricted funds, they're thinking about funds that have kind of any restriction at all, funds that are not just general use. And for purposes of these credits, restricted is actually a little bit narrower definition, and it's talking about funds that are earmarked specifically for the purchase of credit eligible property. So, for example, funds that say these must be used to purchase solar panels would be considered restricted for purposes of the tax credits, but would also be considered restricted under the normal, broader kind of colloquial meaning of the term. However, funds that were provided for example, clean energy projects or low carbon reduction projects or environmentally friendly projects, those would, under the colloquial discussion, generally be called restricted. But for purposes of these credits, because they're not specifically restricted to items of credit eligible property, and there are ways to spend them that would not necessarily be on credit eligible property, those would not be considered restricted funds for purposes of these tax credits. So it can get into some subtleties there that is worth discussing with grantors if you're looking into these, because that can definitely play into how it maths out for the tax credit. I'm sorry to turn math into a verb there, but I think that gets the point across. And let me know if there's more that you wanted me to talk about there, but I think that gives an overview. And I've put the links to the more fulsome discussions of that in text in the responses in the Q&A.
Right. Yeah. And in regards to the follow-up question, though, I think a summary would be if the funds are unrestricted, the grant funds are unrestricted under this definition, then you would still be able to claim the ITC on them. However, if they are restricted, then they would count against your base.
They wouldn't count against the basis. They would potentially reduce the available credit amount. So the way it works is you would still calculate the credit as though you had the full basis. But then you would take into account the amount of funds that were used and the amount of the credit total, add those two together, and if that exceeds the total cost of the system, then you have to reduce the credit until the two pieces added together no longer exceed the amount of the cost of the system. So, for example, if you have restricted funds that pay for 80% of the costs, you would still calculate the credit, come out and say, okay, 30% credit, 30% of total costs, and then you have 30% plus 80% is 110%. So you've got to knock that 30% down until it's only 20%, and then you have 100% of the full cost covered. So you're still being able to calculate that based on the full basis. You're not in a situation where you're only getting 30% of the 20% that's there. So it's honestly, it's a very favorable, a very entity favorable position in that's structured there.
Thank you. We had a question from the locker on a transformer. I believe the transformer would be part of the 5% of construction if it contributed to that cost.
In general, yes. We can't give definitive answers for any specific project here without actually looking into the documents. But generally, those are considered eligible costs, and it's just a matter of ensuring that you're hitting the right percentages. But again, those are things where to get a definitive call on that, it's worth reaching out and having an attorney look at your specific scenario.
Great. I recommend getting switchgear early. It's a major thing that got delayed on our project. Callie's question, yikes, the Doge drama. Yeah, thank you, AC, for the information on getting through to the federal government if you haven't heard back. That's answered. The labor requirements in terms of prevailing wage and the requirements there. Hajin, do you want to elaborate on the answer that you posted about prevailing wage and labor requirements and the exemption for projects smaller than 1 megawatt?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a good question. I'm glad that folks are thinking about it. But yeah, when thinking about the investment tax credit, if you're working on a solar project that is like, smaller than 1 megawatts, which is typical for, if you're doing rooftop solar or something, and basically not doing something large scale, like which is very common for these kinds of solar projects, then you don't have to comply with the prevailing wage or the apprenticeship requirements in order to qualify for the full base credit of 30%. If you are working on like a larger scale project, then you do need to comply with both the prevailing wage and the apprenticeship requirements. From this person, it sounds like it sounded like a smaller project, but they comply with prevailing wage anyway. And I would say like generally encourage like prevailing wage and apprenticeship. These are, labor protections that help protect and like invest in the local, solar workforce that's creating these projects. So definitely always encourage those though, regardless of what the credit requires. And I'll reshare the link to learn more about those requirements for anyone interested.
Yeah, another above and beyond thing that I really appreciated about the Inflation Reduction Act was community benefits plans, which are no longer required, but there are so many great templates out there for community benefits plans and agreements. Some quick questions for Andreas. It looks like Aaron posted the get involved with Revolve link. There was another question in the chat around if you guys are working in Wisconsin where third-party financing of solar is disallowed.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, we've actually had a lot of projects in Wisconsin over the years. We had solar ambassador teams at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and Madison. One of my favorite projects actually is it's called Primates Inc. It is a monkey sanctuary outside of Madison for apparently who knew, but monkeys when they are working in the entertainment industry, they like retire when they're done like acting, and so they go to this place in Wisconsin. But yes, so yeah, so in Wisconsin, we can, depending on the utility, if it is allowed for us to do a lease or PPA, we can explore that with you. But if not, then the loan would, be eligible if third party ownership is not eligible in your area. So, in the loan scenario, it's you're buying the system directly, you're owning it, you're putting it on your roof, and Revolve is providing the financing and managing the relationship with the installer and overseeing the milestone payments and helping you get to a completed project. Oh, you're muted,
Sorry,
Sandra.
la la la, amateur move. I think it was you actually who mentioned the contagious aspect of installing solar. I see Tisha's question in the chat. Do you have data on that and some talking points for municipalities on leading by example?
Absolutely. Yeah, let me pull it up real quick, but we actually got to do so yes, this was a study by Lawrence Berkeley Lab about 2 years ago. And we actually got to do a webinar. So yeah, they did a phenomenal job putting a report together, and we actually got to do a webinar with them talking about it. So yeah, you can check out the link there. It's got a webinar that kind of gives a high level of their findings, but then you can also click through to the report that they wrote up describing it. But yeah, really powerful. Would love municipalities to think more about it. Anyone, any nonprofit, any archdiocese. I mean, it's such a magnifying impact that yeah, we couldn't encourage it more.
Awesome. I see a question from Barbara in the chat on a large solar project in multiple sites through the Environmental Justice Program and a solar roof initiative that were canceled under Trump's presidency. And so trying to get these through the July 2026 deadline. We are here to help you, Barbara. So all of our organizations are here to try and help turbocharge, especially projects that lost funding, like under Solar for All or other initiatives, GGRF that are in limbo. So please, let's continue this conversation. 10 Power can help find financing, Revolve can co-develop EPN, and We Build Progress can help with technical assistance. And we really, like, this is the exact type of scenario that we want to help steward into existence. So let's definitely continue the conversation. We had another question on that was answered by AC, but I was wondering if you could help elaborate live on information regarding the percentage of materials of domestic content required to qualify for ITC direct pay.
So I don't have the hard and fast tables directly in front of me right now. And I'm always one to go back and check the code anytime I have to go and mention a specific number. So I want a little more about what information they're looking for about those percentages. If they're just looking at, what percentage of domestic content does it have to be? That varies depending on the type of project, the particular credit being used, and the year in which construction begins. And there's also potential for under elective pay, there's a requirement for certain domestic content amounts, and if you don't hit the domestic content requirements and construction begins in 2026 or later, it essentially eliminates the credit entirely. So for elective pay, I can say that you do have to meet those domestic content requirements in order to be eligible for elective pay for any project that's beginning construction in 2026 or later. And we did have that information around the required percentages. I sent over in the tax day link to our slightly more fulsome text discussion about what those requirements are. I believe it's a 5-page document that was last updated February 18th. So it should be fully up to date and ready to be read through.
Beautiful. Thank you. We have 3 minutes left here. If folks have any more questions that you want to pop into the Q&A chat, we're doing great with getting through these. Appreciate everyone's in-depth questions. Don't be shy if you have anything that you want to specifically find out about your project. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We will put our information into the chat here, and we really are here, like I said, to help you with your projects and to help thread this ridiculous needle. And I put everyone's contact information on this slide right here. I'll also put my contact info in the chat. We will send out all of the resources and the recording for this webinar. Feel free to share far and wide. We are all in this together, and we're going to get through these times, y'all. We've got each other. One more question from Sherelle. Is there funding for resilience hubs with solar and heat pumps? And capital stack for acquisition. Heat pumps, we have a little bit longer lead time on. So for heat pumps, we have until the 2030s to get the ITC. Resilience hubs, I haven't seen too much federal funding right now. But if anybody else wants to jump in, we've been looking mostly at private grants for resilience.
Yeah, I'll just add that, yeah, we are really focused on resilience hubs this year. Solar plus storage financing is, kind of step one, but then there's a lot of planning and preparation that needs to go into actually being able to open your facilities during an emergency. So we've been referencing this incredible toolkit by USDN that kind of walks people through how to do that. So yeah, we are excited to provide financing for the solar plus storage and work with folks to get through that planning process to get your facility ready to be available during an emergency to your community members, as well as thinking through the communication. How do you communicate to your community members about the availability of your resilience hubs? Let me just grab that link and put it in the chat.
And state by state too, there are still some really good state grants that are available for resilience. So great, we're right here at the top of the hour. We are really thrilled that all of y'all have taken some time to participate with us today, and we are very much looking forward to continuing the conversation. So stay strong and power on.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Be well.